Okay, let's take a look at our yearly review, M8, Math 800 methods, the methods that we're going to be using all year. So make sure that you've watched the whole year and done all the notes and the homework before you watch this, or just watch this, whichever. But this is going to be a summary of the whole year. So we started off with bed mass, the order of operations, the preference of operations. Typically doing things in this order. Then we saw things like two signs side by side, and remembered that we circled both signs side by side and using the rules like same plus and different minus, and using those same rules for multiplication and division. A positive times a negative, a positive times a positive, being a positive, same plus, and two different signs, same plus. So be careful with those methods. Don't overlap them. Remember, -2 minus 2 is equal to -4, not 4. We add and subtract on the number line, and we have two sides side by side, and we're multiplying and dividing two of the same signs or two different signs. We can use the rules same plus, different minus. Okay, so continuing. Fractions. So we have due to top, due to bottom. Due to left, due to right. Don't overlap these rules. It doesn't mean due to the top, due to the left. It means if you're going to do something at the top, do it to the bottom. If you're going to do something to the left of the equation, do it to the right. Remember that when working with equal fractions, direction matters. So if we have over equals over, and we times the top by 2, we better times the bottom by 2. But if we times the 2 in one direction and we want to go in the other direction, we have to do the opposite operation. So direction matters. So some other methods that we're going to work on with equal fractions and fractions are multiplying fractions, multiplying the tops and multiplying the bottoms, dividing fractions using the method flip and multiply, using the method lowest common denominator for adding and subtracting fractions and clearing up complex fractions, and then working with improper fractions and mixed fractions. We're going to work with scale figures, where something is to something as something is to something else. We're going to work with percentages, where we can use the same method as we did above, over equals over, and it's always going to be something is over something of is equal to the percentage over 100. We're going to use that a ton. We also have part over total is equal to decimal. And so many manipulations of that. Because I could times those sides by total and part equals decimal times total. Or I could times those sides by total and divide both sides by decimal, and total equals part divided by decimal. Remember, when we're multiplying by percentages, we want to multiply by the percentage you want to be. So if I want to get 10%, I multiply by the decimal of 10%, 0.1. If I want to multiply by 50%, I multiply by 0.5. If I want to multiply by 90%, I multiply by 0.9. If I want to get 110%, I multiply by 1.1. If I want to add 10% to a something, I just simply multiply it by 1.1. Carefully go through those notes from the decimal section. anytime you can start to learn different things to do stuff in better fashions. Again, if I want to add 10% to something, why would I multiply it by 0.1, get the 10%, then add it to the original, when I can simply understand that if I want to add 10% to something, I want to be 110% and then just simply multiply it by 1.1. If I want to subtract 10% from something, I could multiply it by 0.1 and then subtract it, but I'd rather recognize that I'm just going to be 90% after and just subtract or times by 0.9. Okay, top right. Expressions and equations. Remember, we're going to work first on the signs, then on the numbers, then on the letters. Remember, the golden rule. Do to the left, do to the right. I'm going to write opposite. Both sides, because we're always just doing the opposite operation to both sides of the equation. Adding and subtracting to both sides, multiplying and dividing to both sides, distributing and then combining like terms, and then doing stuff to both sides, squaring and square rooting both sides, multiplying both sides by the LCD, rearranging the order of the terms, etc. Being very careful when you substitute, making sure that you substitute. One of our most used methods in math, substitute. Make sure that you substitute with brackets every single time. And when you get more comfortable doing the performance of substitution, you'll get more used to it. Using methods like greatest common factor and lowest common multiple or lowest common denominator. Square roots, square rooting numbers, estimating square roots, graphing with a table of values, graphing x and y, remembering our x-intercepts, putting a 0 in for y and solving, and our y-intercepts, putting 0 in for x and solving, and then geometry, all of our geometry formulas. Now, remember, we really only need to understand the basics of those formulas, because so many of the other formulas just build on them. So we're going to remember area of a rectangle or a square is length times width. Area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. Area of a circle is pi r squared. The perimeter of any of these shapes is just add up all the sides. The circumference of a circle, if I bring the 2 down in front of the area formula, we get 2 pi r. Remembering that if we have a right angle triangle, we can perform Pythagoras. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remembering that we may have similar shapes and we can relate A is to B as C is to D, or some version. The volume of any prism is the area of the base times the height of the prism. The volume of the respective manipulations of the prism, like the pyramid is to the rectangular prism or cube, and cone is to the cylinder. The volume is just 1/3 area of the base times height. If we want to get any surface areas, we're just going to surface area SA. We're simply just going to lay the shapes flat and do the formulas above. And then, as you can see in the notes, there is the formula for the volume and surface area of a sphere and the surface area of a cone, which are too difficult to figure out laying shapes flat. Then we work through probability, where the probability of X occurring is just the number of outcomes over the total number of outcomes. The number of desirable outcomes over the total number of outcomes. And we're going to do methods like a tree table and filling out tabular formats. Okay, great. So that was the methods that we're going to do in grade 8. Remember, I might have forgotten a few that are in the videos. Now we're going to look through the remembers and the student boot camp.